Hi, I'm Gary Null. I want to share another classroom on the air with you. We began when I was a kid. And I remember once being a paper boy and having my paper route and earning a nickel per home. That's how much we got at the end of the week for each day that we delivered the newspaper. And a few other jobs, cutting grass in the summertime. You make a dime here for a small lawn. You make a quarter for a large lawn. And you save up. You save because you want to buy something. In my case, it was a Schwinn bike. And I remember we had saved up, a bunch of us friends, working class neighborhood, and we'd all done different work, different jobs. And my dad was sitting at the table when we were talking about going to the circus and the carnival. And he said, well, what you going to do? He said, well, we're going on all these rides. And we were talking about the rides we wanted to go on. And so he was listening. And he said, well, let me see something. He said, put out on the table how much money you all have earned. So we did. And he said, okay, so if I understand you right, Tom, you're going to go on 2 or 3 of the rides 2 or 3 times, and each one of you are going to go on different rides, but I don't see that you're all going to be on the rides together. Yeah, no. He said, well, wouldn't it make more sense since you're all buddies? You just take what's in the pot here and just equally divide it so you're all on the same rides. So nobody's left out. Because did you ever think what it's like if you're watching your friends on a ride that you can't afford to be on? Hadn't thought about that. And I think we're around 10 years old. And Dad said, well, okay, it's just something to think about because in life, we never all get through it alone. It is only by what we can do with other people in our cooperative efforts. He said, Gary, he said, when your brother, my older brother, who was 5 years older, he said, what do you think happens if something in the house breaks? Who fixes it? Someone here who may or may not have those skills, or a friend or a neighbor. They don't charge you for that. That's what being a good friend and a good neighbor is about, helping other people when they need it. So just think about that. You're young now, but these are principles you need the rest of your life. Mainly my mother gave me these great insights. And she also said, never profit at someone else's loss. And I thought about that. And I was not smart enough to really intellectualize it. But almost everything she said was like having a philosopher tell me something that I had to grow into understanding. But later I found out how important that was. From then till now, it's helped me. Why is this important? Because there's a new study out, University of Nova Scotia, where they said that the spiritual teachings of a child, meaning what spiritual input the parents have, this does not have to be affiliated with any religion. And all of these studies have shown that meditation and yoga and Tai Chi, the things that take us to a deeper place, a more spiritual place, this grounds us into a basic universal ethic. What do I mean? I'm sure that right now, if I said, do you care about women? You'd say, of course we do, and their rights. Of course. You can disagree on different issues, but, but think of all the people that are fighting each other now. Yes, I got vaccinated. No, I didn't get vaccinated. Well, you should have gotten vaccinated, but did you know the side effects of the vaccine? Did you study to see what? And these arguments are occurring even in families where people are almost disowning each other or stop being friends because they have a disagreement over something that we shouldn't have a disagreement on. We should be unified, saying anything that we're given in the way of food or beverages, anything that's put into our bodies, we should have it safe and effective prior to that. We shouldn't have to find out afterwards. And that's one of the reasons that we rely upon each other. What was your experience? What did you think of that? What did you think of that? Oh, I took that and I got deadly sick. Did you? Well, suddenly there's a cautionary moment. Can we learn from someone else's experiences? The answer is yes. Do you care about children? Of course we care about children. Who doesn't care about children? A kid gets lost in the woods and suddenly the whole country is looking, will they find him? Will they find him alive? And when the kid is found, alive, we all feel good. That's our humanness. Now, let's put some pieces together from this study. What happens if the parent is so busy with so many other responsibilities that they don't have time to sit uninterrupted and explain the numerous circumstances that we're going to go through in life and how we should be appropriate in our behavior, concerned about not just our own well-being, but the well-being of our family and friends and community and universally. How can I feel good about children being healthy and safe and free from malnutrition and poverty if I can't care about the children in Yemen who have been suffering in a needless, completely worthless war by Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, and the United States supporting it all, including a blockade that prevents medicines and food from getting to the starving Yemenis. Hundreds of thousands of children starving and dead. How can I care about human rights and my rights, my family's rights, my community's rights, if I can't also at the same time care about rights that are taken away in other countries? And we frequently are part of that or behind it in regime changes. Would we do the same thing if we knew that the shirt we're wearing and we look at the label, does it say made in Bangladesh, made in China, made in India? Or does it say made with union labor or made with fair labor? Because that's the only clothes I would want, is something that someone wasn't exploited to make. But do we think about that when we go to a big box store? We've got unlimited amounts of clothes to select from, or we're going to buy the ones that we can afford. But do we stop and say, did someone else have to lose for me to gain this product? Spirituality would have you ask that question. That's when my mother said, do not gain from someone else's loss. And so I've never played the stock market. And when I am racing in championships, world games, I always go back into the race, or when I finished, and cheer on anyone who is still coming in. And I always thank the other people for competing, because they allowed me to compete against myself, not them. I have too much respect for them to compete against them and beat them. I don't use the word beat, because our society has become obsessed with competing and winning at any cost. Would we have wanted to win and beat someone if early in life we were told, cooperate? Your competition should be friendly. It should be constructive. It should allow you to know what more there is to learn to grow. I just finished a race, the Florida State Championships. And because of COVID, there have many races in about 3 years. So you're always uncertain going into a race, even though I've done over 500 races. But it was a rainy, cold, rainy day. That's when that cold spell hit all of America. It also hit down here. And I remember thinking, I'm not going as fast as I should be or could be. And all the athletes, were doing the best they could. But afterwards, there was a sense of camaraderie where how'd you feel? And we all had the same experiences, really rough running when you got water three inches, on the ground because you don't get good footing. And so you all shared something in common. You shared a race, but you're really competing against your previous best time. See if you could get faster. Because the rule in America is the older you get, the less you can compete until you're no longer relevant. Okay, well, I got the results. I set a record in the 2 mile and I won the gold. And it was my fastest time in 5 years. So, whoa, that surprised me. So it meant that something I've been doing in the last 5 years has allowed me to actually increase my speed and endurance. So I reflected on that. Now I'm going to share that with others on how the older you get, you don't necessarily have to get slower or weaker or lose your strength, endurance, stamina, or balance. So learning one lesson in life can be then used in other areas of your life and shared with other people. What good is it to have a gift in life if you can't give it away, if you can't play it forward? What's the purpose? If I have more than I need, then I have a moral responsibility, a spiritual responsibility to share it with others. Now, not everyone will appreciate the gifts you give them in life. Some people will take it for granted. You don't need a thank you to know that you should have done the right thing to begin with. The thank you comes from honoring your spiritual self. That's what our parents, grandparents, and aunts and uncles and school teachers and others, if we're lucky, impart to us when we're young, because that helps us in making better choices in life and being happier with the life we have. Because right now, if you go to buy a dress or a suit, and if you don't look to where it's made, then you have a moral responsibility for someone else suffering because you won, you got something cheaper in a box store, and they lost. Go to Bangladesh. Here's what you would see. You would see a culture that does not honor women. You would see the same thing in India, in many places in the world. That's not right. And we've had many movements doing the best they could to try to bring this to people's attention: equality, opportunity. Everyone should have an opportunity. They shouldn't be excluded because of their race or age or gender or religious beliefs. How they succeed in that opportunity is up to them and the tools that they are bringing into that opportunity. But imagine a woman getting up before sunrise and she makes her family the food. And then she goes to work. She cannot afford to drive to work, so she walks. And she's walking with tens of thousands of other women. They go to a factory. The factory is a crude, almost 19th century type of factory in the conditions. Women are timed on how long it takes them to sew a button on or a zipper. And if they don't do it fast enough, if they're considered lazy, they're punished. They're only allowed to get up to go to the bathroom twice a day. They have a brief break for lunch. And at nighttime, frequently after dark, you'll see them en masse walking back to their homes where they have to go in and make next day's foods and do laundry, all these tasks you would never imagine someone would have to do. But in that highly patriarchal society, that's what happens. They're making anywhere between 18 cents to 28 cents an hour. So whatever money they make goes for foods. So you can have the clothes without thinking or feeling any guilt because we don't want to know. But should we know? There's a difference between not knowing something innocently and honestly. That's fine. But did you want to know the truth of where something comes from? The food that you eat, the clothes that you wear, the computers, the computer you're looking through right now to watch this. This was made wherever, depending upon where it was made, with materials that in all probability were exploited. Think of this, your cell phone, and think of your computer and your laptop and your television. Think of how many things use cobalt. Where's that cobalt come from? Where's the silver come from? And China controls about 90% of the world's minerals that we use, and it exploits that. But everyone in the corporate world exploits getting the best market price they can for the greatest return on investment, and that's why people invest. This is a hot stock, but is their product harming the planet, contributing to global warming, hurting individuals? If we ask that question, then we would have an answer that we may or may not be prepared to handle. What if you found out that about 93% of all Americans every day intentionally make choices that can only harm them? Now you can say, well, it's not their fault because they were propagandized from being a child on. You've got to have, if it's a Sunday, you're going to not see ads for making fresh orange juice yourself. No. You're going to see an ad for alcohol. Alcohol in any concentration is harmful to the body. It prematurely ages you. It kills millions of cells. But we've been conditioned to believe that this is how you enjoy yourself with friends. You drink something that's going to harm you and ultimately would kill you, causes non-fatty liver disease, not due to alcohol, but due to sugar. But you're also told to eat these things that contain sugar and to eat these things that contain meat, and a lot of meat and too much meat, far more than what your body needs. As I've mentioned before, your body only needs about 2 ounces of protein per day, and yet we're sitting down to big steaks. We have the big steaks. We're giving you 2 weeks worth of protein in one meal. Oh, and the body can't store protein, so we're going to break it down, and you're going to get urea and nitrogen, and that's going to cause brain fog and create toxicity to the liver and kidneys. As a result, we have a lot of liver problems. We have a lot of kidney problems. But we never give anyone a black box warning. The information you're about to be receiving is pure propaganda. And once you take this in, it can control your thoughts and perceptions, and that creates your reality. And that's in alignment with those people who need you to be open about everything so they can exploit you when they're open about nothing. There's no transparency here, and there's complete expectation of transparency here. We can break the rules, and you can't. We have a double system of justice, and you're not a part of it. We are able to eat healthy foods, but we sell you sick foods. Healthy beverages and juices and mineral water, and you drink the crap. With spirituality, you could do none of the above. You couldn't be a teacher and create a curriculum based upon critical race theory, which is pure racism. And I'm ashamed of my professor colleagues, where I've been an adjunct professor, teacher, some of the finest colleges and university in the East Coast for 45 years. And yet today they're not teaching critical thinking. They're teaching the curriculums they've been told, and they're terrified of students. Because the students could create chapter 9. What student would go into a class demeaning the professor, wanting a completely safe, non-challenged environment if they had spiritual teachings from their parents? And even with spiritual teaching from the parents, you can still be influenced today by the co-parent, the government, its agencies, the internet, its platforms, and all the agendas people have behind that. This all comes down to the idea that, what am I doing in a proactive way to learn what I clearly don't know and apply it in ways that are meaningful for myself, my family, my friends, and society, to make it a healthier society, a more equitable society, a more fair society, and especially important to help those who are left behind, which right now is over 200 million Americans. That means there's 2.5 million children leaving school each day. And when you and I left school at lunch, we'd go back home and we'd have lunch, right? We never thought about it. We had a bed at night. Today, their children don't have that. There are people living paycheck to paycheck if they're lucky to be working. So if you have a spiritual grounding, you want ethics and morals, you want truth and honesty to solve problems, to cooperate, then you wouldn't have Yemen. You wouldn't have Libya being destroyed. And by the way, just so you're aware of it, Libya under Gaddafi, and he was not perfect, but look what he did for his citizens. He created thousands upon thousands of these constitutional committees. So a local group, self-organized by people, would talk about what they wanted. And they, in effect, a lot of what happened in day-to-day life was based upon what was important for everyone and sustaining the society and its ethics. It was called the Paris of Africa, 54 countries in Africa. The longest lifespan, Libyans. the best educated, most educated, more educated as a percentage of the population of the United States or Great Britain. How about that? More people went to higher education. Women had the same rights, more rights for the Muslim women in Libya than any other Muslim country in the world. If you insulted a woman, you could go to jail for that. They were healthiest. Everybody had to have a home. It was part of the mandate. In fact, the only people that didn't have a home was Gaddafi and his parents. And he said, I will not have a roof over my head until every Libyan does. And we thought he was just being eccentric, sleeping in tents, and no. And the oil money that came in, it went into general funds that were then distributed right into people's bank accounts. When you got married, you got $50,000. If you got out of college and there wasn't a job, you got paid what that career would have given you if you were working. If you wanted to farm, they would buy you the farm, buy you the equipment, buy you the seeds so you could farm. They wanted to create a gold denier to replace the dollar as the reserve currency. Libya had built the largest reservoir ever built in the world, not just for the Libyan people, but also other arid countries in Africa. There was no crime in Libya, and yet we decided we wanted his oil. We didn't want all the other African countries to support using the gold denier. Instead, we wanted to use the dollar. And so they hatched a coup and artificial, these people who were brought in as agent provocateurs to kill citizens, blame it on Libya and Gaddafi. Today, you can buy slaves in the open marketplace in Libya, or organs, because they'll take a slave and they'll cut out his organs and sell them. It's a complete destroyed country, but not for the oil people and not for the U.S. hegemony. If you were spiritual, that wouldn't have happened. If you were a policymaker, that wouldn't happen. If you belonged to corporations who just didn't try to exploit the world for as much profit as they could get, knowing full well that most shareholders don't think about where did my profit come from. Well, we're very popular. We're making drugs. But aren't those drugs also drugs that are killing people? Yeah, but so what? Look at your profit. And unfortunately, people do. We're making missiles, I say. And drones that are armed, I say. So people are going to die so I can get more profit. Yeah, that's true. So you see, we care about profit. We care about a standard of living comes from profit. Where there's no moral or ethical or spiritual input, that's ultimately the outcome. You balkanize people, you have them fighting each other. And so people don't care where their dress came from if someone has to suffer, or where their cell phone ingredients come from, because they want their cell phone, because that's what's important in their life. There's a lot of reasons we're dysfunctional at this point and making bad choices. But one way we can correct this is start making choices based upon universal truths. If I want something that's right for me, I should also acknowledge that all around the world, people should have that same right. But we can only care about ourselves. Too many people, not everyone. And that's why we don't look at the consequences of our actions, our consumption. Just look at it this way. We're not going to stop anything at the global level from the planet overheating and increasing all these unusual weather patterns. Why? Because we're not telling people we don't need to eat meat. We're not telling people they don't need all the clothes they have. We got too much stuff. So what happens when your whole life is based upon getting more and more and more? Think of all the doctors and lawyers and architects and people who are highly educated, who are committed and disciplined, and who committed themselves to getting ahead so they could provide quality of life and a higher standard of living for their family. And then one day they get there, but it's not enough. And so they want more, climbing that completely illusionary, non-existent, but in our minds, a higher euphoric level. I'm acknowledged because I'm the dean. I'm acknowledged because I'm making more money. Look at what I own. Look what I rent. Look at my private jet. As if these are important. What got left out of that? Kid growing up with nannies and tutors, but without the adult, because there was just no time. But there would be time. Sooner or later, we're going to actually be able to go for a walk in the park, but not right now, because I've got to take this call. I see. Do you think you can buy love? Can you buy character? Can you buy morals, ethics, empathy? Can you buy happiness? You would think absolutely yes. Look at the Kardashians. Look at all the reality shows. Look at all the celebrities. Look at all the red carpets. We never wear, their clothes. We can't afford it. We don't dine in their French restaurants. We can't afford it. We don't live in their zip code. Can't afford it. Don't have their cars. Can't afford it. Don't go to their private schools, the Ivy League schools. We can't afford it. Why should you want it? Do you think any of those people are happy and spiritual? If so, point them out. I'd like to see them. Oh, and you're really popular? Joe Rogan, you got a big audience. Terrific. When was the last time you led your audience, those 11 or 12 million, to say no and walk away from Wikipedia that serves the special interest and promotes false information, destroys innocent people's reputations? Haven't? Okay. But what about going out there to support bringing back jobs to the United States? What about putting some of your hundreds of millions of dollars you make into grants and scholarships for small businesses that will go back into the communities? What about rehabilitating a block in a ghetto where you have a community health center to help people who have problems, mental or physical, and a community garden, and classes and trades that will help a person be able to succeed in life, and affordable housing, especially for the senior citizens? You haven't done that yet? I haven't seen you do anything yet that's going to make a difference. Just having a big audience and talking about important issues is like having a book of knowledge, but never choosing to apply that in real life. What would happen if you boycotted clothes made in Bangladesh and showed why, showed the exploitation of women? Because then you couldn't live with the idea that, well, Hollywood, you have dresses that can cost $25,000. All right. And you have diamond-studded cell phones to make you special. Want to show where that came from and how many people were exploited so you could virtue shame? Now show me how many of those people have spiritual values, care about others. It's all about caring for oneself, but it shouldn't be. We shouldn't have a win-lose society, and we wouldn't if we applied spiritual principles that other societies have done, and we did at one time, but we're not doing now. Just a thought. It allows us, if nothing else, to think maybe in a little different way, a little deeper about, start with the food you're eating. Is it really promoting health? And if not, what is missing in you that allows you to eat something, drink something that can cause you only harm sooner or often later? But it will be there to meet you. Karma always is, for the better or worse. Do you have too much of something? And if so, what are you doing to share it with others who have less? Can you stop long enough and stop participating in the establishment's propaganda? Can you stop reading the New York Times? Can you stop listening to MSNBC or other stations to just give you propaganda? Can you stop voting for people who have a terrible voting record? And if they're all voting for the industrial war machines and the intelligence agencies' apparatuses of spying on us, why would you want that person to be able to continue in office? Find people to vote for who are populists, who believe in universal truths, not just individual truths. Just a thought. Thank you for taking your time. And in our next classroom, I'll have something else, something different, something that's only meant to have us think for a moment differently. Go to neutral and think about why we do certain things, say different things, live in a certain way, when there's a lot more doors open in life. Have a nice day.
If you would like to stay updated and see more content, you can follow PRN on Twitter at live.prn and YouTube at Progressive Radio Network. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you again for listening to PRN, the home of progressive voices.